Hi, everyone. How's it going? What you up to? Welcome into day 11, I think, of 30 days of going live. I need to keep like a running tally in front of me because I think I might be ahead or behind today. I'm so glad to be here with you again. I hope that you've had a nice weekend. And if you had a long weekend, as we did in the US, I hope that you did something fun and relaxing and that you had some good rest and relaxation throughout the weekend. So I am talking tonight about the first step. And this is an area that I struggle with so much that I have a sign on my wall that says, ask yourself what the first step is, and then ask yourself, is that really the first step? And then ask yourself, what's before that? And I do that for me and for my clients, because for me, when I think of the first step, I think of the whole thing. And I love to illustrate this in a way that that talks about eating a sandwich. Okay, so we're gonna start by talking about sandwich eating, and then we're gonna get into how to really discern what the first step is. So think of your favorite kind of sandwich. I'll tell you mine. My favorite kind of sandwich is turkey on really good wheat bread that's not chunky. You know what I'm talking about. If you're getting like a multi-grain or a wheat bread, there's smooth breads and there's chunky breads where you can like bite into seeds. That's not for me. Turkey, cheese, ranch dressing, a little bit of spice, salt and pepper, Greek seasoning, something like that. Avocado if you've got it, bacon if you've got it. Like, make me the best sandwich I could possibly have. So think of your favorite sandwich ingredients and imagine in front of you that you have taken the time to make your ideal sandwich. And if you don't like sandwiches, make something up that's handheld enough for you to put it in your mouth. And so when we dream of something that we want to do, we want a new job, we want a new career, we want to set boundaries, we want to be a good boundary setter, we want to get a dog, we want to move to a new home, whatever it is that we're thinking about that we want, when we are high achievers, we imagine all the steps at once. And I equate that to biting the whole sandwich at once, right? So when you make a sandwich, when you dream up your ideal meal, something that you know is always going to taste good for you, if you pick up that sandwich and you shove the whole thing in your mouth all at once, what's going to happen is you can't taste the sandwich. There's too much sandwich in your mouth. You can't chew the sandwich. It's too big to chew. So your mouth just gets stuck like that. You can't swallow the sandwich because it's, again, like too much. It's filling up your mouth. And you've just taken this idea, this ideal of what you want and how you want something to go, and you've single bitingly destroyed it because you want to do it all at once and do it right, and you just shove the whole thing in your mouth. So when I talk about doing things and taking the first step, very often when I'm working with my clients, they come in with step like 27 as the first step. And so I like to play the game of what's before that. And so if you're thinking about this sandwich and you're actually making this sandwich yourself, the first step is not make the sandwich. The first step is check if you have ingredients. If you don't have ingredients, you got to order groceries or you got to go out to the grocery store to get the ingredients for your sandwich. If you look in your fridge and you have the turkey and you have the bread, but you don't have the ranch dressing or you don't have the spices that you want, are you going to just say like, well, no sandwich for me? Or are you going to go make yourself a shopping list and go get the ingredients for the sandwich? Our careers are very much like this. We work too many hours. We do too much stuff. We spend too much time obsessing over getting it right and doing it all at once and impressing everyone around us, including ourselves. And we burn out really quickly. And if we can't see the path to it, if we can't see the several steps that it takes, very often, instead of feeling like we're in and we're doing something productive, we feel immediately burned out from the start. And then we don't want to do it. And this is why, and if you didn't watch my live yesterday, go back and watch it, because yesterday I talked about comfort zones. And comfort zones are less about comfort and more about familiarity, the what we already know. So if I already know my job is hard, I already know I'm not a good boundary setter, I already know my boss is toxic, the workplace is toxic, I'm not bought into the mission, this isn't ever what I wanted to do in the first place, or this isn't what I want to do for the next 20 years until I retire. If we live in that, then we think it's easier to stay there than it is to take all of the steps that we would need to take in order to figure out what we actually want and go after it. And so every once in a while, we hit this level of frustration where we say, like, I gotta go somewhere else and start fresh and find a new boss or find a new company, or and wherever I go next, magically my issues won't follow me. Magically, I won't be a workaholic. Magically, I'll just half-ass it. I won't be a high achiever. I'll just do like a little work and then go home for the day. Not realistic. And if you've lived that like I have, you know that it's not realistic to just make the job change and expect that all of the habits that you've built up over all of these years aren't going to follow you and challenge you. So I like to ask, what's before that? When my clients say to me, Lauren, I want to be a better boundary setter at work. And I say, cool, what's the first step? Very often I get, well, I just have to leave every day at 5:30. And like, that's it. If I don't leave every day at 5:30, nothing's ever going to change. And I have to shut my computer off at 5:30 and walk away from it, put it in a drawer, walk away from it. Well, cool. But if you're working until 7 or 8 o'clock every night and you've been doing that for a bunch of years, just deciding that you're going to stop working at 5:30 is like a really cool idea, but it's likely not something you're going to do. It's likely something that you're going to do once. You're going to feel guilty about it. You're going to feel like the next day you have a lot of work to catch up on because you basically took off early, is what you're going to tell yourself. And you're going to be exhausted from it. You're going to say it's not worth it because I still have all of this work in front of me. And you're going to quit. You're going to quit the goal because you bit off too much. You bit the whole sandwich at once. So then I would ask, what's before that? What is like a real first step that you can take? That's a small boundary. That's a small step that can get you where you want to go. And I recently did this in a workshop I was doing at the University of Maryland. I did a workshop for their alumni association, which, looking for a workshop, hire me. But I did a workshop about burnout. And one of the things that we talked about was this first step. And so I gave the group the exercise of, you want to run a marathon and you don't run. This is not what you do. But you want to run a marathon. What's your first step? And when you think of your first step, come together as a group and figure out like who has the real first step. And they worked on their own for a little bit. They worked together for a little bit. And what it came down to was, well, the first thing, if you've never done any running, the first thing that you need to do is run short distances. Like you can't just start with like 26.2 miles. You have to start with like a mile or a half a mile or something like that. Cool. And I said, does anybody have a step that's before that? And somebody raised their hand and they said, well, we didn't count in mileage. We just said like run for a minute, walk for a minute, run for a minute, walk for a minute. Cool. Great. Different ways to start training for that. But what's before that? And nobody had an answer. And the what's before that is, do you have shoes you can run in? Because not everybody does. I don't run unless I'm being chased with a knife, but I don't have shoes I can run in. I have shoes I can walk in, and I probably need a new pair at this point. They're pretty well worn in. Got tons of flip-flops, and I have a bunch of cute sneakers. But if I were to start running, I would need to go to a running store, because as a hypermobile person, I also have like super flat feet. So if you put me in shoes that have a high arch, I'm probably going to get some pain there. If I don't have enough of an arch, I'm probably going to get some pain. So like I would need to go to a running store to find running shoes, which means my first step is, where's a running store? Where even do I find a running store? And so if I were to make a commitment about starting to run a marathon, starting to train to run a marathon, which again, you will never catch me doing, but this is a cool example. My very first step would be, do I have shoes? My next step would be knowing that I don't have shoes, figuring out that I don't have shoes. Where is there a running store? Or a sneaker store where they fit you like they did when we were kids? Then, and only then, can I move on to the third step, which is go to that store. Make an appointment or walk in, whatever their policy is. Go to that store, get yourself a pair of running shoes. So we're 3 steps in now, and we haven't started running yet. And that's okay. Because as high achievers, we think we should just like stand up and like, let's go run. But that's not what we're equipped to do. And so when my clients come to me and they say, Lauren, I need to set better boundaries at work. I need to work fewer hours. And I say, what is step 1? And they give me this ultimatum step of, I'm going to leave every day at 5:30. Well, the first question I have is, where's all the work going to go? Because you haven't actually set any boundaries. So if you're just cutting hours and the work will still be there and you think that's going to help with burnout, it's not. And it's not your responsibility to know that coming in to talk to me. And that, I think, is one of the things we give ourselves the hardest time about, is that we think we should know before we come and work with a coach. And we do this like everywhere. I'm going to start going to the gym. I'm going to get in shape before I start going to the gym and working with a trainer, so that the trainer can see that I'm already in shape and I know what I'm doing. I want to learn to cook. I'm going to buy nice pots and pans and a Julia Child French cookbook, and I'm just going to start cooking and know how to make escargot. That doesn't work that way. We have to start with like, how do you scramble an egg? Do you have eggs in the house, right? So we have to start small, especially when we're trying to make big sweeping change, because anything that we do, we want it to be sustainable. So yes, the first step here in running a marathon or training to run a marathon may be looking to see if you have shoes. Let's assume that you've done step 1. Do I have shoes? No, you don't. You've done step 2. Go get shoes. Go find a running store. Step 3, get the shoes. Okay. Step 4 is not run for 30 minutes. It's not run for a mile or 2 miles. It's look up how to train, or hire a running coach who works with people who do like couch to 5K kind of things. What kind of trainer do you want to work with? Maybe you interview a couple of people if you're looking for a trainer or a coach. Maybe you start walking just so you can get moving, and you walk on a timer, or you walk on with a pedometer for a certain number of steps. But you don't go from sitting on the couch to running 26.2 miles without a whole bunch of steps in between. If you try to do that without any training, you either will fail, because who can just go from nothing to 26.2 miles, or you will hate it so much, or you will be injured from it so badly that you will never want to try it again. So my goal when I'm working with my clients and when I'm working with myself is that the changes that we make need to be small enough to be sustainable. And so instead of building a long scale project plan, we start with what's the end goal and what is one small step you can take. And I meet with my clients at least twice a month formally. I also offer on-demand service. So whenever they need me, basically they can reach out. If they text me at 3 a.m, am I responding? I am not, because I have good boundaries. But basically between the hours of 9 and 9 Eastern, I make myself available for my clients if they need me. It can be a quick text. It can be a phone call. It can be a full session if that's what we need. And I will do my best to fit in whatever I can fit in and prioritize my clients' needs as I can. Now, that being said, if my client isn't talking to me for 2 weeks and their first boundary that they're setting is that at 2 o'clock every day, they're going to set an alarm and they're going to walk around the building. And they're going to try to make that happen twice in the next week. Well, if they do that 4 times in the next week, I don't want my client to wait another 2 weeks or week and a half or whatever it is to come and talk to me about it. I want to know. I want to know, how are we going to stay accountable? How are we going to stay in touch on this? Are you going to text me? Am I going to text you? What kind of support do you need? Do you need me to cheer you on? Do you need funny GIFs? Do you need inspirational quotes? Like, how do we get this to a place where it feels pretty good to you that you're doing this, that you're working on this? And all my clients are different, and some of them don't feel like they need to talk to me in between our calls, and others I talk to all the time, and both are right. They're both right ways. And that it also varies, like, based on what the thing is that we're working on. If it's something that's a longer term thing and we're testing the waters and you've got a 2-week plan, you may not need to reach out to me in between. If you're doing something that's like a daily struggle and you're trying to get on it, we can check in as often as needed. And so with my clients, I really try to work on what is the smallest achievable step that you can get to in the easiest way in order to feel like you're moving forward. And very often, if my client is 100% sure that they're going to do the thing and it's a bigger thing than we both think is one step, then we can try to break it down into more steps. We can test it. I've had clients come back to me and say, I took on too much, or the goal was too small. And we, re-gauge how it's going to go. And that can be really helpful. And the cool thing is that we get to do things in the order and with the intensity and level of repetitiveness that suits us. There's no one size fits all. What is one size fits all is that as high achievers and as people pleasers and as often workaholics, when you have that combination of people pleasing and high achievement, we tend to bite off more than we can actually chew. So when you think about what's the actual first step, I want you to also ask yourself, but what's before that? If there's absolutely nothing before that first step, then that's your first step. Some of my clients like to have 3 steps ready so that when they finish step 1, they can move on to step 2, they can move on to step 3, but they still have them in an order so that they are doing one thing at a time. So I have had clients who have said, once a week, I'm going to go into a bathroom stall at work, because I work in an open area where everybody has access to me all the time. Once a week, I'm going to go into the bathroom at work when I don't have to use the bathroom, and I'm going to stand in front of the mirror and breathe for 3 minutes. And then we come up with a breathing exercise that's going to feel good, feel countable, feel like it is doable, like it takes up the amount of time that you want it to take up. Then we can increase that, to twice a day or twice a week or whatever the next step feels like it is. But if you set a goal for yourself that every day, no matter what, you're going to go into the bathroom for 3 minutes and breathe, then on day 3, when you can't do it because you've literally been around other people all day, you're going to feel like you failed. You're going to feel like the task is not sustainable. And you're going to want to give up on it. And there's no like exclusive on this, right? Like, I don't feel like I am 100% correct about this. I haven't done the research. I've done the anecdotal research. I've done the every client I've ever had has run into this at some point research. I've done the I run into this with myself that right now I'm working on a project where I'm trying to get some of my written stuff in an order where I can repost it every so often. And I'm super overwhelmed by the project. And so right now, my next step is to just take the first page of notes I have on it and work on that. 1 page of notes. And I have a time set aside this week to work on 1 page of notes. I have like 20 pages of notes because I put together a whole bunch of posts I've already put out, and I've gotten some feedback from my business coach, and I'm trying to, sort through like, what can I build so that I have a few posts that are recurring, that resonate and that work well, so that I have some consistent posting and I can adjust for Instagram versus TikTok versus Facebook versus LinkedIn and whatever else might come down the pike. And I need to take it small, because could I sit for 16 hours and just try to get through it all? Absolutely. I won't do it. And that will make me feel like I can't do it. So I have to sit with 1 page at a time, and in one sitting, only work on 1 page of notes at a time. And that's my goal, is this week to go through 1 page of notes and figure out what I need to do with those notes, have an outline for myself. And that's the only step. I'm not saying I have to finish page 1. And I may get to a point where I'm chugging along and I want to keep going, and bully for me. But my Alexa just reminded me that I need to go live tonight. And so, I'm taking this project for myself in small bites, because taking it all at once, I'm just not going to do it. I'm just going to fail at it, because the high achiever in me is like, well, Lauren, if you're not going to do it all at once and get it all done in the same sitting, then it's not worth doing, probably. And I don't like it when I talk to myself that way. So I encourage you to think about, what are the projects? And I'm of course very career focused. So what are the projects in your career that you want to be working on, that you want to be setting up? Where do you want to set boundaries? Where do you want to be having more fun? Where do you want to be standing up for yourself differently, or going after something differently? And it's not about yelling at yourself in the mirror to sit down and do the work and put your resume together and start looking for other jobs and write a cover letter. That's not it. It doesn't work for us, because we will self-rebel. We will rebel ourselves out of doing anything if we make ourselves do it all in one lump. If this resonates with you, if you're thinking like, I don't even know what the first step is, you don't have to. All you have to know is you want something to be different. And then we can talk about what you want to be different. We can talk about where you might start. We can talk about how long it might take. I've had clients who've made change in very short time periods, and then they get really hungry for more. I've had clients who it takes 2 or 3 months before they're willing to implement any of the ideas. And that's okay too, because you didn't become a people-pleasing high achiever overnight. You're not going to unbecome a high-achieving people pleaser overnight. And you know what? It's like actually pretty nice to remain being a high achiever and to have a little bit of people pleaser in you, because it's part of who you are. It's just how you manage to it and how you take control of what you're doing as an individual that really matters. And so I've had clients where it's been 2 or 3 months before they can take action, because there's so much conversation to have about where this came from and how it manifests and how it serves you and how it punishes you and all of those things. I know for me, it was a good 2 months before I started to really make changes. I was making tiny, tiny little changes initially. And I really needed to prove to myself that those changes were real, that they were sustainable, that they felt good, that I didn't feel like I was punishing the people around me or punishing myself. And once I had that proof of concept, I got hungrier and hungrier for change. And I went from 80 to 100 hours a week to 40 hours a week and building a business, and then eventually out on my own. And not even so eventually, it was like 6 months before I was out on my own. And I've had clients who've gone from working a lot of hours to more normal hours by boundary setting, by talking to their leadership and saying, here's what I need to hand off. But it doesn't come like that. It's not an overnight, one day kind of thing. So on tomorrow's live, I'm going to talk about what it looks like to be in a coaching partnership, what it looks like to hire an executive coach, and what it looks like to be in that coaching partnership. And I think that will be really helpful. So I hope you'll come back tomorrow as I continue my 30 days in a row live. And thank you so much for being here tonight. Have a great night.